At a level two, the business is beginning to take some shape to it. As we've mentioned, the revenue is around $1 million or between a half million and a million. Um, we think of businesses from a profit and loss standpoint. We want to see the gross margins at least 40% and the net margins with all the add backs that we've talked about, owner's compensation, owner's benefits, personal expenses, and all the non-reoccurring charges added back. We want to see the cash flow number being at least 20%, which means if it's doing $1 million, the cash flow number can be up to or more than $200,000. When we talked about level one businesses, we talked about multiples that the business will potentially be valued at between 2 and 3 times. As we move up into a level two business, we see that multiple that the business is going to change or trade at, be valued at, grow a little bit. It begins to bump up from 2 to 3 times the cash flow number to 3 to 4 times the cash flow number. And a business is beginning to be formed. We'll talk about the organizational structure in a moment, but it's beginning to be more than just a job for the owner. He's got perhaps as much as 4 employees now, and we'll talk more about what those employees typically look like in terms of their responsibilities. But the business is beginning to get a little bit of scale to it and a little bit of girth to it. We'll come back and talk about the potential buyers for a business that's a level two business in a moment. If you go back and you look at the org chart of what a level one business looks like, it's very simple. It's the owner and a couple of technicians that are out in the field. A level two business now, you could have as many as 4 employees, and maybe the wife's involved in the business also. You've got the owner, you've got maybe 2 or 3 field techs that are out in the field. You perhaps have a customer service manager, and then either the customer service manager or maybe the spouse is acting as the HR person and sort of acting as the bookkeeper also. So the finance functions someone needs to be responsible for those, and the payroll and the benefit function, someone needs to be responsible for those as well. So either the owner is beginning to delegate those to either his spouse or hiring someone in the office that's responsible for those daily responsibilities. So the business now has up to 4 employees. It's still very owner dependent, though. If you look at the owner focus now, the owner is responsible for marketing, the owner is responsible for sales, the owner is responsible for overseeing the operations of the business. There's someone that's probably running the books day to day, doing payroll, doing receivables, handling the payables, but the owner's beginning to pay more attention to the profit and loss statement and the balance sheet and what the operating margins are and what the cash flow is. As the business is growing, the owner has 3 or 4 levers that they can pull in terms of what the growth strategy is. They can expand what their market penetration is within the current geographical market that they have. They can perhaps diversify what their service offering looks like in terms of products and services. Or the third area of potential expansion would be to broaden what the service area is that they're covering. And so, beginning to really focus on marketing, beginning to develop a sales process, thinking about how the business can grow up to that $1 million level. It that again falls on the owner's responsibility, and obviously, as the business grows, he needs to think about how he's going to support that growth in terms of both what the field staff needs to build towards and what the office staff needs to look like. They're not formal processes that are really built into the business yet, at least not documented process. I mean, there is a particular workflow, and there is um, a method that functions are handled in terms of when a lead comes in, how is it handled, how is it assigned, um, when a technician is out in the field, when they have certain questions that come up, how are those handled? Um, Processes are beginning to develop within the business, certainly because the owner's not doing it everything now. He's having to delegate that out. But they're not formally being documented yet. It's more word of mouth, and it's embedded in the owner's head first, and then he's beginning to transfer that knowledge base out to the operational staff or to the full field staff. But there's not formal documentation yet. Um, the owner is beginning to view himself as a business owner now. He probably doesn't quite have that completely figured out in terms of how he begins to delegate more responsibilities. He's very much in control of the business. He's beginning um, to delegate, but he's beginning to figure out how he turns over some of these responsibilities and begins to think more like a business owner and runs the business as a business, and less like just a job that he can pull a paycheck out of. After all, he is having to manage 3 or 4 people, and so he needs to begin to think about what that um, looks like. He's beginning to make pretty good money at this point. You know, if the business, if the net margins are in the $200,000 range, he's probably paying himself, you know, somewhere between 75 and $150,000, and so he's got a real business that's up and going now, and it's kicking off real cash flow, and he's 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 beginning to pay himself a nice income out of the business. When you look at the owner's skill level as the business is continuing to evolve and grow, he's beginning to figure out what he needs to be doing in finance, and what he needs to be doing in marketing, and what he needs to be doing in sales, and what he needs to be doing from a strategic standpoint in terms of growing the business, the culture that he wants to build, and beginning to define himself as a leader. This is probably the first time he's ever done this in his life. She's ever done this in her life, and so even though they're beginning to understand more what's required from a finance standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, from a sales standpoint, from a culture building standpoint, and from a strategy standpoint, even though they're beginning to figure out uh, what's needed in each of those areas, they're probably doing it for the first time, and there's a lot that they're learning, and they would tell you on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being I'm just beginning to figure this stuff out, and 5 I would say that I'm pretty good at it. They would probably rate themselves as a 1 right now, because they're a lot of the things that they're doing for the very first time, but they're doing it. And they've reached the point where they have a business now that's doing up to $1 million of sales, and they got 3 or 4 employees, and they've got customers, and they figured out how to get in front of customers, and they figured out how to bring leads into a pipeline and be able to close business, and be able to assign and delegate workflow, and be able to produce revenue. And so they've got something that they've proven can be successful in the market. Now they just need to figure out, now that they've sort of broken through that level one category and they're in the level two category now, how do they maximize what the profitability is, how they continue to grow, how do they develop the culture internally in the business where there's not constant churn. Employees enjoy being there. They feel good about the environment that they're working in. They feel like they're appreciated. They feel like they're being fairly compensated. They feel like there's um, a decent career path for them. And so they've built a culture where they have employees that have bought into the culture that's been established and what the future of the business could be. So they've really got something here, and they're beginning to get better at the multiple responsibilities that they have. Um, but they've got a business that has gotten to that second level, and they certainly have something to be proud of.